So you've read the title, and some of you are probably already freaking out, but I ask you to hold on for 1 second and let me weave my web here before you assume something about what you don't even know. What's going on, guys and girls? I'm GhostRobo, and my crew for the podcast this week, we had some scheduling conflicts, so we had to push that back. It'll be recorded later in this week and posted then, but I didn't want to let this weekend fly by without an opportunity to talk to you guys. I had a lot on my mind, and so I figured we would do our own sort of private show together tonight. So get some snacks, grab a chair, pull the curtain, and let's do this. Before we dive into game talk, I really hurt my arm this weekend. Normally I don't get injured. I've really had hardly any injuries at all my entire life. I don't think I've ever actually broken a bone. The closest I came was trampolining with my dad when I was about 10, and I landed my nose to his kneecap and I was bleeding everywhere, but I didn't really break anything. It healed up pretty darn fast, but man, I strained my triceps so bad playing football with my family this weekend, to the point where I could barely use my left hand. It felt so weird. It was shooting pain up to my wrist, and then I thought it was better today. It was just a little sore, but I tried to throw just 3 passes to my little brother, and my God, driving home, I could not use my left hand. It totally just, I don't know, tricep is used in almost every gripping, whatever motion, or in a lot of different aspects that you can do with your arm, and it just totally, it hurt for 2 hours straight. So much pain, and I don't know what the heck I did. I'm afraid I'm gonna wake up, my arm's gonna be just laying there next to me in the bed, ripped tricep takes off GhostRobo's left arm. I mean, it feels okay now, but I definitely need rest. So what better way to do that than with games? And there wasn't a major release this week. Well, I guess Disney Infinity came out, but I had that early, so I've been playing it for about a week and a half now, and I'll kind of go into that more later. Today I wanted to talk about something different and a little bit deeper. That would be, did Bioshock ruin gaming? And maybe you're thinking of that and Ghost, you're the most psychotic person ever. You don't even know what a good game is. But I loved Bioshock, and that's why I think it might have destroyed something for me. I was trying to think, all these people are playing Destiny and getting so into it. They're playing so much Destiny, hours upon hours, grinding from 21 to 22, getting all the way to 30, going through the raid, finding times where 5 of their friends can get together for the raid, and all this stuff, and just getting so hardcore into it. And I thought to myself, I've never been that way about any game, and I wish that I was. And I don't know if it's just a way that your brain sort of works, a personality quirk where you can get so invested in a single title and dedicate so much of your time, invest your life into it. But I crave that. I think it's so cool that people are that hardcore about one game. I consider myself incredibly hardcore about gaming as a whole, but one single game absorbing all of my attention, focus, time, I don't know if it's ever happened in quite that way. I'm not really into MMOs, and that's a major time sink for many people. But even something like Diablo 3, I knew people that got 70, 80 hours deep into that, and I just didn't. Or games like Monster Hunter, Pokemon, things where there's a little bit of a collectible RPG, anything with a grind. You can dedicate tons and tons of hours. You hear people that have 150 hours in Skyrim, or they have 300 hours in Fallout 3. My game clocks have never reached that high in any title. And I was trying to think of what the reason is. What game would it take? What kind of genre would capture my heart so completely that I would be that enraptured? And I thought back to Rapture and what Bioshock did for me. It was sort of my second coming of gaming. I really loved games. I remember getting the PlayStation 3 at launch and playing Calling All Cars and having a great time with that. And, seeing the first sports titles on next gen back then was brilliant. I got the N64 right away. Mario 64 was a huge part of my life as a kid. And then I got Donkey Kong 64 and that lime green system. So pretty. Beat Ocarina of Time right around Christmas time. Dealing with the Game Boys, all the different varieties, SP, Advance, Color, the DS. I've been super hardcore into gaming, but Bioshock was where it really evolved into a livelihood / total obsession. I'd been listening to podcasts for about a year or two before the release of Bioshock, the whole 1-up website, crew, magazine, show, all of that I was really, really, really into. And I miss those days because it was so fun to come home from high school and like get the podcast and kick your weekend off. And I miss having that kind of, I don't know, like their website, just all that they did there, guys like Garnet Lee and Shane Bettenhouse and like an incredible cast of characters that really helped me formulate sort of my view on gaming and the gaming industry as a whole. But alas, Bioshock came out and I was blown away because it did things in such a unique fashion, at least for me, based on my backlog and my history of what I had played previously. Nothing had quite reached that level of immersion, of environmental, just like they did so much with creating a living, breathing world and making it a place that felt like you were going there, like teleporting you through your TV screen into this other dimension. And I loved games back in the day, on NES and mechanics-driven titles like Super Mario Galaxy and stuff even more recently, like Mario Kart 8 or Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare. But when you have a video game that merges story with gameplay and also environment, it's truly magical. And that game sucked me in such a way that I was obsessed with the world, I was obsessed with the gameplay, I was obsessed with the lore, I was obsessed with the storyline. Everything kind of clicked with me. And so I posted on Twitter about, what games have clicked with you, what games have you become obsessed with? Because I was obsessed with Bioshock, but it wasn't something that I played over and over again. And I think it sort of warped my world in a good way about what a great game should be and gave me a little edge of harshness when it comes to reviewing games, because I think it takes a lot for a game to earn a 9 or a 10 and to truly impress not only me but us as a gaming group, like as a community. We need to demand more, I feel, from most of these titles, and that full package feels like such a random leaf falling off of the tree. Like thousands of leaves fall off the tree, and you get like 1 or 2 Bioshocks or Last of Us, or I guess World of Warcraft for some people, or Grand Theft Auto 5 for others. So I posed this question about what games, have you been fully absorbed in, and I got some really good and interesting answers. The first one was about Bioshock, and it comes from Brianna, and she says, honestly, I'm still watching analysis videos on Bioshock Infinite, not because of the plot, but because I like hearing people talk about it who have analyzed the game from different perspectives, literary, racial, gender roles. It's fascinating, and I adore being this intrigued by video games. They offer the kind of immersion and conversation starters that I've only personally had after reading books authored by the likes of Joseph Conrad, Ernest Hemingway. This obsession with finding and reading new things about these games allows me to be immersed in worlds even after I've left them and moved on. Thanks, Brianna. I think that's a really great point and a great letter, and it really hits home with me because that's how I was after Infinite. I wanted to absorb every little detail, and it was one of those things where I guess I was involved in the game, even beyond the game, just like you were, because I was no longer playing the title, but I was still somehow tied and bonded to that world. And so it's not the same sort of absorption as players who are playing Destiny for 100 hours, but it's a way for a game to capture your heart. And I don't go back really and play games that often, but I do like thinking about them. And I think that's sort of that secret ingredient of a great movie or a great game, is that it keeps you pondering even beyond the life of the media. So you reach the ending, you get to the final minute or you get to the final cutscene, and yet there's more for you to do beyond that. And I'm not talking about dumb, like go solve a puzzle, but that whole thing about you want to talk about it, you want to dissect it. And I guess that's a way for you to add hours onto your play clock, even if you're not playing. Now we have a letter from, who's this one from? This one is from, I believe it's from Diego, it looks like. This is a really good question, but my answer is simple. The Last of Us. Why? Because that's a game that is good not at one, but at multiple things: story, mechanics, sounds, acting, graphics. So he's starting off talking about what we've already talked about, but then he brings in an interesting point, which is that for me, that game was addictive. I finished the story like 50 times and it still wasn't boring. I've never been like that. So we have like me and Brianna who are like really into the game beyond the game, but then there's also people like Diego who go back and play it many, many times. And so you could be super obsessed with a title by going through it again and again. And this is where I sort of bring the crux of my confusion of if I will ever find a game that I'm that absorbed in, that fully invested in, because to me, it's going to take a single player game that builds that world, that builds that story, that builds that environment, that really, really invites exploration, not only of the game mechanics, but also of the game world, but also of the characters, but also the plot. And so that seems like such a single player thing to me, but I can't be bothered to replay a campaign over and over again. So on that note, like, I need a multiplayer / open world / more dynamic video game to really wrap me up. Like, it has many other people, but for me, the genres of the SWTORs and the MMO version and the World of Warcraft and now like the Destiny or the Skyrim, like, that does not get me, and I'm not sure why. Is it thematic? Is it mechanical? Do I not dive in because I don't like the worlds that are created? So I thought to myself, what if there was a Bioshock MMO? What if that existed, and how would I feel about that? So it somehow incorporates the cool combat, it somehow incorporates the fantastical nature of plasmids or vigors. It brings in exploration and very crazy characters with a lot of different layers, beautiful locations, unique sort of paranormal elements, and maybe that's part of it as well. Like, the fantastical really gets to me, and I'm sure some of you are like this, whether you're a Harry Potter fan, whether you're a Hunger Games fan, whether you're a fan just of, that kind of magical novel in general, or movie or game, like that, more than like the medieval thing, like the whole Skyrim thing. I don't know that I could ever be really fully invested in dragons and dwarves. Star Wars is not my favorite thing in the world. Destiny is like space and planets. Like, that's like why I had so much hype for Destiny, and why, I mean, I loved Mass Effect, and a game where it's about really great crisp shooting, leveling up your own character, creating your own dude, and then delving into different areas of the universe. Like, that sounded so awesome. I mean, the game just isn't that. It's not. I think Destiny, and I'll be doing like a full review of Destiny later, but it's basically the definition of more fun than good. That game is a lot of fun, but I don't think it's very good. And so it's like, what theme or what sort of, universe would really do it for me? And I don't know. Like, the Bioshock world seems like it would be that, but at the same time, I mean, how much more could you do with one of those locales? Maybe if there was like a Bioshock universe where you went from Rapture to Columbia to whatever the next one is, like, that would be incredibly exciting. I think there's an aspect of shock and awe and sort of wonder that really captures me. So even in a game like The Last of Us, there's nothing fantastical, but you're really excited to see what happens around the next corner. And to me, I'm never like that about Fallout, about Skyrim. When I tried World of Warcraft, never like that. Interesting point by one of my friends of the show, Ben. He says the game I've been most absorbed with was Dark Souls. And he talks about how the reason he loves Dark Souls more than Dark Souls 2 isn't because of the gameplay mechanics, but because he thinks Dark Souls did so much to inspire his imagination. It gave me more than just what can be experienced through playing the game. For example, every entity felt like it was there before my character existed. Every boss felt like they would have lived on, regardless of whether or not I existed. I didn't feel like they were placed in the game because they needed to be some cool boss fights, but rather they felt organic, like they were part of something, and you were the one coming upon them. Unlike other games, the boss usually interrupts you in order to disrupt your plans. You were the one coming to interrupt them. Most other games give you the main character and his story and then center every single world element around them. Dark Souls didn't do that. It created a beautiful, intriguing world and then made you a foreigner. It made you fight for survival, and when you succeeded, it made you a king. Great points there. And it's another interesting sort of dynamic, which is, are you more invested when the game gives you a character or when you are the character? And I waver on this. On one hand, I think that you being your own dude is really powerful, but it has to be done so right. And I think the elements that really need to be there are a lot of visual customization, and it can't just be in the character creator. Like, that's great to have a very fleshed out, opening character creator, but you need to have a way to distinguish what you did in the world. So like, if you beat this sweet boss, maybe you throw his tooth on a necklace and wear it. Or if you reach a certain level, you get crazy armor. And I'm not talking about shaders, and I don't want the same looking crap. I want really distinct armor that tells a story of its own. And I think it also has to have a lot of ability customization. You got to be your own. You basically have to grow your own skill tree. I don't want to just follow the roots of everyone else. I want to be able to branch out and look and feel and act and behave totally different. That's all from a more mechanical standpoint, a visual standpoint to me. But from like a story standpoint, I don't like when you're a blank face. I can see how some people would get really wrapped up in that, and you would place yourself in that scenario. But the way my mind works, I have a hard time doing that. I don't feel like it's me running around in Fallout 3. I don't feel like it's me running around, even in a game like Mass Effect where you create your own dude. I'm glad that they place some story already on your skin, because it's hard for me to just jump in and say, hey, this is me and I'm here. Like, turn off all the rest of the world and just imagine myself within this area. I kind of like it when they give you something to work off of. So a game like Last of Us that we've mentioned, or even a game like Half-Life, what I think is good there is there's so much surrounding story. Gordon may not be, he might not be the most talkative of characters, but like all that's going on because they're talking at you, they're telling you, they're very descriptive. Take something like Destiny, like what? And there's a difference between having a lot of lore and then having a lot of story, because you can have a bunch of lore and create this really fleshed out world, but if I don't feel like I'm there for a reason, it's hard for me to really cling to it. And so Bioshock does a great job of building this beautiful world that feels so lived in. It's creepy, it's eerie, you can tell things went down. It's like there was a curator who went through and hand-painted every single room so that it was perfectly designed. So when you entered, it was like coming upon a Disney World ride. And that is very meaningful. But there was also story and a pull for you to go forward. It's not just like you're running around to gain levels, you're running around to soup up your sweet gear, but there's also a plot point that dictates how you're going to travel through this game. And to bring in the last letter of the day from Ryan, he says, the Mass Effect series is the game I was most invested in, especially 2 and 3. The story was excellent, the dialogue choices were great, the characters were great. It was one of the few games I played the campaign multiple times with all the Paragon and Renegade options. Can't wait for the 4th. Mass Effect, see, again, that's a game where I don't think I could play it twice. That's an interesting one because it would almost dilute my experience by changing the choices. I can see wanting to see it from all angles. That's pretty cool. And to really understand the inner workings of the game, or you're so just, you get so excited about the world that you want to see how it can twist and turn depending on what you pick. But that would, to me, obliterate any sense of immersion, because now it's like I'm just a random dude running around and these choices don't matter. There has to be weight to what you do. I love when games give you big choices, and I know that's hard, but that's what kind of makes Walking Dead frustrating for me. Because as invested as I get in that game, that's one of the games where I feel the most invested, because Clementine has a story, but I feel like Clementine. And Joel's the same way. Joel has a story, but I feel like Joel. And maybe I'm a weirdo in this way, but to me, if there's a very well-crafted character who has his own backstory or her own backstory, and then I get to be that character in the game, I feel like now I'm fused with that person, and I get to carry out their actions and kind of live forth into the future as them. Like, their past is their past, but now I am taking up their role and get to dictate sort of how they experience the world. Whereas a blank slate, to me, I'm like, I don't know. And maybe that's my lack of imagination, or maybe that's just the way I work, but it's harder for me to find a reason. I think when you do that, you rely so much on external sources for story and for plot and for those elements that would make you excited about the game world. It becomes weird, and you almost become like just like a pair of wheels rolling your way, experiencing as you go. I like having something to play off of. So when I'm Clementine, I know like that she's a young girl, and I kind of give her a little bit of my personality, take a little bit of hers, we mix them up, we make this delicious smoothie, and then we saunter off into season 2 and then hopefully season 3. But what kills it for me in The Walking Dead is that the choices ultimately aren't that significant. Like, you end up in the same place one way or the other. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point where a game could be like, you either leave this world or you leave, you go to that, you stay there or something, and that totally drastically changes your fate in the game. Maybe that's asking too much, but maybe there's a way to incorporate choice to keep you going. And I think that's something that we've clearly identified here. Many of these games have elements of choice, whether it's within an RPG system, a character creation system, a legit choice system like Mass Effect. But if we think of games that are, really have the ability to get people obsessed, it's mostly that. On the other hand, you have titles like League of Legends and Dota 2, Call of Duty that people get so into, and I wouldn't mind getting so into one of those as well. That's a perfectly viable type of game to get super hardcore, just life obsessed with, and that's never hit me, and I don't know that it will, because I get bored easily. And so to just have a mechanical draw seems like something that I would sour on faster than if there was an emotional connection. And I think that's what a lot of people get out of many of these games that they, find themselves just full on head over heels with, is that they're emotionally attached to their character, to friends they've made within the MMO, to friends that they've made with NPCs in the single player game. And so to bring it back to Bioshock, it's like, what did that game do so well? Well, it made you feel like you were part of a living, breathing world, like a couple people mentioned. It gave you a purpose and reason for being there. It added mystery. Mystery is an element that is used far too seldom in games. I don't think we have enough mysterious thriller games. I think of stuff like Alan Wake. I think of stuff like Bioshock. Those games pull you forth because you're so curious to find out what happens next. Most stories are about killing a big bad guy, stopping a war, saving the world. To me, that's not as exciting as if there's something intriguing or mysterious. You can make the story small scale in the sense of Alan Wake as a dude and his wife going on vacation. It doesn't have to be some magical epic quest. And you could sort of throw Last of Us into that bin as well. Like, that is a big, bold, beautiful game, but it's not on the grandest of scales. You're a dude and a younger girl traversing the torn up United States, but there's never an instance where you're like coming upon a rush of people leaving a city or a disaster zone or a huge quarantine village. A little bit, you encounter some people along the way, but it's pretty small scale. And I think so many games are obsessed with the big booming explosions, and you find yourself fighting against the whole of the alien race, or you find yourself defending from all the robot overlords, or you find yourself, face to face with the king of evil or whatever, that it loses some of its luster and loses a little bit of its believability. Like, can you craft a really brilliant tale that is one man's tale, and not one man that goes on to be the hero, but one man that's exploring something about himself or the place that he's from or the people he knows? And that's what I think like Bioshock does, is that it does have its set piece moments for sure, but it feels like a very personal story on a at least from like a pure plot perspective. And I just wish more games would do mystery. I think that's something dramatically undervalued in games. And if I was ever to make a game, it would have so much mystery, you would be freaking out and you'd be playing it right now. You wouldn't even be able to listen to the end of this little podcast. You'd want to just finish it. But Bioshock also has the gameplay elements. It has a little bit of character flexibility. You can pick your plasmids. And so it kind of ruined gaming for me, just in the sense that it was so great and I had so much fun with it that my expectations flew through the roof. And I see a lot of people saying sometimes, Ghost, you're so hard on games. Well, I'm hard on games because I want the best from them. I expect the best from them. And that doesn't mean that it's not a good game if it doesn't deliver, but why not hold this medium to a really high standard so that we can pull forth the best of the best out of the industry, so that we can really require designers to challenge themselves and challenge each other and build something brilliant rather than just another carbon copy of another pretty good game. Let me very clearly state that I love games. I have so much fun every year. It's hard for me to make a Game of the Year list every dang year, and even 2014, which I consider a down year where there isn't a true standout as of yet, I will have a tricky time shrinking my list down to 10. That will be a tough task. It always is, because I love games. I have so much fun with them, whether it's just goofing around in NBA 2K15 with my little brothers, whether it's playing some of the single player epics, whether it's trying to convince myself that I need to collect 100% of the collectibles in the next Assassin's Creed because they're all there and they're tempting me. Like, I love games and I applaud them when they're good. But I don't think that we need to just say, oh, it's the best game ever, game of the forever, we're making the greatest game ever. That's gotten us in so much trouble this year alone. So much trouble. Think about all the games that came out this year that had so much hype, and after they released, they didn't even know what to do with themselves. Like, they just kind of fell flat. I think that's true of Titanfall, Watch Dogs, And for some people, Destiny. Some people are like all aboard that train and flying through at 99 miles per hour. But a lot of people have dropped off and been like, this is a really fun game, and it could be so much more. And I don't think there's anything wrong with hoping and wanting and critiquing, because we do want that truly spectacular game. And I'm seeking that game not only for myself, but for you as well. I mean, titles like The Last of Us really, really elevate our industry and our hobby and our fun to new levels. And they do that better than a big selling Call of Duty or a brash Grand Theft Auto, because they say, hey, gaming can be something more than shooting people. And sure, there's shooting in Last of Us, but people don't talk about the shooting. They talk about the other aspects. And for me, a game that is going to really own my soul, at least for some time, it needs to do those other aspects. I don't think I'll ever be that crazy about Call of Duty or that insane about Madden or that absorbed with an MMO. I need a title like Bioshock, a blend of Bioshock, The Last of Us, Destiny, these games that have elements that I adore. When will we see one that brings them all together? Destiny could have been that game. Think about if Bungie had utilized even the level of storytelling they had in Halo within Destiny. Think about if they had a variety of armor and weapons. Think about if the planets were mysterious and there was a little bit of intrigue and maybe eeriness to some of the areas. Think about if they had made your experience with that game truly magical and used every turn to tell you a new tale and show you something different, to encourage environmental exploration, to place things throughout the world. I think audio logs in Destiny would have been a home run. Maybe some people aren't as big on audio logs as I am, but in Bioshock, that is like half the game for me. I think Bioshock succeeds so much, and I think that the audio logs are one of the secret big factors of why that game is as memorable as it is. Because you're hearing stories, you're hearing factoids, you're hearing things from people that were in the game. This isn't like a developer giving you commentary. This isn't like a freaking guide reading you a history book. This is the actual character telling you what happened, and they're usually left on cliffhangers. There's usually a part 2. There's different ways, and it just really fills in all the gaps, and you feel like, wow. I can picture myself when I'm in those rooms listening to those audio logs, and I can picture what happened and how I would have reacted or what's going on. I can see it in my mind's eye. It's a brilliant, beautiful way of storytelling. I think had Destiny included that, it would have been amazing. I know it doesn't fit with the structure and pacing of their game, but had Destiny borrowed a little bit more from Bioshock, maybe slowed the pace down just a little bit, it could still be all about shooting, but add a little bit more care to that world. Caress the narrative for a few more months or years. I don't know what it would have taken, but Destiny really could have been that game, and I think that's why the hype wall was so freaking high. And when something's that high, it has a huge chance of crumbling, and I think it kind of did here. But a game that merges really, really addictive mechanics with like a really cool story that you can kind of glom onto and emotionally get involved in, and then a character that you want to be, whether he has his own story or he doesn't, whether she's a created character or she's on the cover of the box. You know, how cool would that be if you had a let's just say Mass Effect, because I think a lot of people got into their Shepard type character in Destiny, making story choices. And then you had like a really brilliant MMO-style creation system with all these different abilities and different gear, and it looked so different. You were so pumped to get that loot, and you would grind it out with your friends, and you would go and get that purple because you knew, you had to farm this hard boss, and it was really, it was a little bit random, but it was also very definitive, and you could understand the systems. Like, that game would have been incredible, and I still think Destiny take some strides, some big strides in a really wonderful direction. And I hope that we'll see more titles bite off that big of a piece of cake, and hopefully it'll be delicious. I'm thinking about a game releasing soon or in the next year or two from Guerrilla Games. It's Project Horizon right now, I think is the code name. And it's sort of their open world RPG, but it's mixing sort of, I guess, melee/medieval with futuristic. So we've seen some screens, concept art, big difference there, Ghost. You got to make sure we rewind concept art from this, upcoming project. And there's like these robotic transformer dinosaurs meeting up against girl with bow and arrow. It looks really cool. The environments are beautiful. I'm hearing that it's a huge campaign, but also co-op. They're shooting. The guys at Guerrilla Games did Killzone. Whatever you think about that, like, they're pretty good at shooters. So there's going to be cool shooting, RPG elements, different tribes and aspects. Like, that game could be the game for me. It could be the game, and even beyond the storyline, maybe I would find myself so drawn to that world, so alluring that place could be that I would want to spend more hours there, and I hope that's the case. I look at the horizon, not that horizon, but the horizon of upcoming releases, and I think to myself, what game could really get me? Is it Bloodborne? And you know, From Software has their own unique way of storytelling that doesn't really suit me, but some people will find that completely crazy and get obsessed with it. I'll love it for its mechanics and combat. I'm sure of that. I played it and it had a blast. You know, there's games like Batman Arkham Knight, which I love that universe. Like, that's the universe I enjoy, but I don't know that it's a game I want to be in for more than 12 hours. I think it kind of needs to have its very set acts and very set peaks and very set culminating moments, very set ending, and then kind of your finish, and that story leaves you. It's sort of like Bioshock Infinite. It can be memorable in that way, but it can't really be my life, you know. And I look to Witcher 3, maybe that's it. I haven't really gotten to The Witcher before. That sort of era and setting doesn't really suit my style. So I look and I'm like, what is it going to be? And I don't know. It's a little bit disappointing because I don't see anything out there that is really going to grab me in the way that some people have been grabbed by Destiny, or some people have been grabbed by Skyrim, or some people are so pumped for Fallout 4 because that was their game. And yet at the same time, it's exciting because I don't know what I don't know, and maybe something will sneak up on me and just steal my soul. And I think that's super, super, super enticing, that maybe there will be a game that one day releases and just gets me, and I get it, and we're just the best of friends for hundreds of hours. I long for that day. I don't know that it will ever come. If it does, I'll be sure to tell you guys. Let me know in the comments below what your game that has really absorbed your mind, your hands, your heart is. Is there a game that just wrapped you up, and maybe it was multiplayer and you dumped 200 hours in with your friends? Maybe it was an MMO and you've put 1,500 with your clan. Maybe it was a single-player game that you played 7 times straight through because you couldn't get enough of that story. Repetition really bores me, so I have a hard time even watching a movie twice, let alone playing a game. Or maybe it's the other way around, but either way, I have a really tough time going back to stuff. But maybe for you, you found this title so incredible that you had to have it every couple months or once a year or whatever it may be. But let's talk about it. Let me know in the comments below. I want to know what that game is for you, even if it's one we mentioned here. Tell me what game it is. Tell me why. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I really, really love talking to you guys today. I hope you had fun. Like I said, a full podcast with some guests will be coming later in the week, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to have this discussion with all of you guys. My expectations are high, but only because I love games. I'm critical, but only because I love games. I want more, but only because I love games. And Bioshock is what really changed my whole worldview about that. It did things differently, and it showed that it's possible to make a game that can be all things. And it didn't have multiplayer, and it didn't, keep me occupied for 100 hours, but it did all the other aspects that I feel are going to be required for a game to be truly a masterpiece. And we can take little bits from other titles as well. Mass Effect, The Last of Us, Skyrim, even stuff like Destiny has aspects that I think are really, really remarkable and very successful and could be a piece of an even better game. And so I'm just looking for that game. I'm looking for that game. And did Bioshock ruin gaming? It didn't ruin gaming. It definitely changed my thought process. It definitely made me a little bit more, like, I expect more because of that. If I had never played Bioshock, if that franchise didn't exist, if Ken Levine and Irrational went poof before they even started, I might view games differently. My favorite game of all time might be Assassin's Creed 2. It might have been Uncharted 2. Instead, though, I ask for just a bit more. And I wonder what studio is currently working on that game that will give us that extra inch, that extra oomph. In the past, Naughty Dog and Irrational seemed like the huge, colossi that could do it all and could do no wrong. Will that continue to be true? Irrational is gone now. I don't know what Ken Levine's up to, but will Naughty Dog hit a home run with Uncharted 4? I worry a little bit about that game as we wrap up here because there's such high hopes after The Last of Us. And remember that Uncharted is a totally different franchise than The Last of Us. Both from a gameplay standpoint and a story standpoint, it does not do things as unique or as, intense as The Last of Us. The mechanics of The Last of Us, the story of The Last of Us really strikes an emotional chord on a fear level, on just a sentimental level, on a sadness level, on a heartstring Tugger level. And Uncharted isn't that kind of a game. So I feel like we've set the bar so high for Uncharted 4, and I wonder if it'll reach it or if we'll have to wait for Naughty Dog's next project. But what studio is going to merge? Like, let's find another one. I want another studio to really be a big, 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 big hit for me and for what I like. You know, The Walking Dead, that's some great game right there. It's a great piece of game, and I think it could be a lot better. And so, like, what studio is going to take that next step and deliver us something so special that we think about it and wonder, did it ruin gaming for me because it was so dang good? And now I hold everything else up to that standard. And I wonder when the next one will be, because I don't see it. I don't know where it is. Nothing that is announced currently really convinces me that it'll be that game. And we had Bioshock Infinite and The Last of Us last year, which I think is incredible. We got two really amazing games in the same year. Whether you like the gameplay or not, like, the way that those games were crafted was insane. And I don't think anything right now, I don't see anything like that. So let me know in the comments if you have a game also that maybe will be that for me, for you, for us, because I don't know where it is. And it's a little bit sad, because I love having those mammoth games to look forward to. And I don't mean mammoth from a AAA stance. I just mean, like, this game is going to rock my world. And maybe it's one that we won't know until it hits us, but we knew it with The Last of Us. I don't know if we knew it with Bioshock. I don't know. Maybe that one was a little more of a blindside punch that felt oh so good. But I hope you guys are having an oh so good day. Thank you for listening to my blabber. I hope you had fun. Drink some hot chocolate. We'll wrap up. Till next time, guys and girls, you are the best. As we approach 1 million subscribers, thank you for helping support me to do what I love to do. And I'm glad that a lot of you love it too. So until next time, thanks again, and we will see you all later. Before you click away, before you leave, I forgot to mention one thing, which is that Evolve has a chance to be that rare game that I just completely obsess over and spend all of my life in. It doesn't do a lot of the things we were talking about in terms of world building or exploration or progression or whatever, but that game is so mechanically sound and so much fun and has a teamwork element that I've never quite enjoyed in such a special way as in that game. So that is one that I guess is out there coming soon that might do it for me. It definitely doesn't have like the story stuff, so I don't know if it'll really win my heart completely, but if there's any game, I think it could be that. I love every second I've played of it so far, and I could see myself dipping, you know, dropping hundreds of hours into thousands of matches, especially if they take that thing to a tournament level, or if they if I'm able to get a good group together. Like, depending on how much content they pump into that thing, depending on how long the community lasts, like, that is one I wanted to make sure I talked about, because some of you will be like, Ghost, you love Evolve, why didn't you mention it? And now I'm mentioning it. So maybe it will, maybe it won't, we'll have to see. But there is one, I guess, that I'm kind of pinning some hope to. Not in the same way as a Bioshock or Last of Us or Destiny, but from a pure, straight-up mechanic standpoint, that could be my game. All right, see you guys later. Actually, that is not the ending yet again. Let me just throw down the fact that I think, in hindsight, Bioshock isn't the best game. Like, there's a lot of mechanical elements that could be improved, and I go back and play that, and I'm not blown away in exactly the same fashion. I still think that there are elements that really give me that jaw-dropping feeling and sensation, but I don't think it's like the greatest game of all time. There's definite improvements we've made in the years since that game. It's been quite a while already that could be implemented into an even better version of what Bioshock stood for. So I'm more talking about the concept of that game and what it created and what it sort of evoked within me, rather than the actual specific aspects of how Bioshock handled gunplay or how it handled loot or how it handled whatever. I think you guys get what I'm saying, but I just want to be clear that I don't think there aren't games better than Bioshock, nor will there be games better. I sure hope there will be. If there's not, man, that's sort of sad. But what's not sad is I will see you guys soon on another video. This is actually the real ending. Drink some hot chocolate. Thanks again. Till next time, we'll see you all later.